Welcome to Chapter 1 of Guide to Contentment. This first chapter is called Compulsion, the first edition. So here we go. I am a compulsive drinker. She is a compulsive eater. I don't know what made me do it. I just heard a voice. These are the excuses one hears daily, implying that the will is no longer free, but as if under the direction of another. Is there such a thing as compulsion? Definitely. But how does it come about? Generally through 3 stages: consent, act, and habit. Every person has buried in his subconsciousness certain powers, capacities, or impulses given for his perfection. One refers to our body, the other to our mind, and the last to things outside the body and mind. The first is sex, or the creative impulse. The other is a desire for power, example through a search for truth, or the pursuit of a talent, or the right use of power. But outside of the body and the mind, there are things. The person is finally driven to possess property. Just as the will is free because a man can call his soul his own, so property is external and an economic guarantee of human freedom. Each of these impulses is capable of being perverted. Fire on the hearth is good, but fire in the clothes closet is not. The sex instinct can be distorted into license and perversion. In that case, the other person is really not loved, but is used. One drinks the water, one forgets the glass. Hidden in our nature is a lot of flammable material which is not ignited except by some suggestion from without, with the consent of the will. External influences only tempt, they do not compel. There is no inseparable connection between the two. When Joseph was tempted by Pharaoh's wife, he said, "How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" The mind's desire for knowledge and truth can be perverted by each person saying to himself, "There will be no measure of truth or knowledge outside of me. Whatever I decide to be true is true. I make the truth. I make the law. I am my own creator. I am my own savior." The drive for the possession of things can be turned into avarice, greed, selfishness, and the refusal to help the poor. When does the good impulse become tempted? It becomes tempted generally by a solicitation from without. For example, the sex impulse might be perverted by a picture, a book, a person. There is no perversion at this particular point. There's only a suggestion. This is what is called temptation to do something immoral. No temptation to do evil is wrong in itself. It is only the consent which is wrong. It has been said that it is wrong to repress our impulses. No, repression is not always wrong. As a matter of fact, every expression of something good, like to give food to a hungry person, is a repression of selfishness. When an outside evil pleasure is presented, our nature exaggerates the proportions of everything. It shows the pleasure or the profit through a magnifying glass, multiplied by desire and expectation. One could imagine a mountain of gold, but one could never see a mountain of gold. What the imagination does is to present things to the mind, not as they are, but as the mind would have them to be. Notice that all love songs are songs of expectation. Nothing cheats a man as much as expectation, which promises high, but performs nothing. The desire to pervert our good impulses means that the subjective and the objective meet. That which before was only within the heart now begins to feel the touch and the allure of something outside. As Shakespeare said, "How oft the sight of means to do ill deeds makes ill deeds done." After the consent of the will to do what is wrong comes the deed. As the boy grows into a man, so the will grows into the act. Once that wrong act is done, there follows the uneasiness and remorse, which is actually God calling the soul back to itself. The act, repeated many times, turns into habits. They are like tiny strands of silk, any one of which can be readily broken, but when woven day after day, they become a great chain which no giant can break. Habits tend to create or strengthen an attitude and disposition. They become so very natural that we are hardly conscious of them, whether good or bad. All things lie downstream, and all we have to do is just float like a log, when finally the habit creates a rut in our brain so that we automatically respond to any temptation. We have what is called compulsion.